All right, today I have Bob Morse of U.S. News and World Report. He is Mr. Rankings, okay? He's the guy behind U.S. News' rankings. We're at a big college conference here in New Orleans, and I want to take the opportunity to ask Bob some questions about the rankings because I know a lot of people out there are really interested in them and would love to know who is this guy behind the rankings. So here he is. So Bob, thanks for letting me ask a few questions.
Well, thanks for
First,
asking.
I know you're just dying for me to answer some
No,
questions.
no, it's okay. It's
Okay.
communications. I 100% agree that a lot of people see information published and there's a name and they want to
Right.
see
Yeah,
the
yeah,
face
the
behind a
guy.
name
Right.
and it makes it seem real. And when
Right.
you hear somebody talk about something, it makes it far more understandable.
Exactly.
That's how some people process
Right.
information.
So let me ask you this: how should kids use the rankings?
The rankings should not be used as a sole basis to choose one college over another.
I
They
agree.
should only be used as one tool in a group of other kinds of information uh, in going about choosing a right college. You have to consider cost, location, input from counselors, and major sports activities, distance from home. Everything has to be put into the um, mix, and rankings should just be one part of it.
Do you have any idea of how if kids really use it that way, or how? Or are kids really, when the rankings come out, this was in September, everybody wanted to know what was the number one school, right? Harvard number one. Was it Williams number one in liberal arts
Yeah,
colleges?
well, Harvard and Princeton were tied, and
Yeah,
right.
okay.
Well, this is a copy of
New one.
the latest book. Um, Well, I mean, I think the use varies. I think it's certainly. I mean, I want to. I think I believe that a small portion of the people are using them sort of as a line in the sand and telling their children that they won't pay unless they go to a top school. But I think that's atypical. I think most people are using them as just information in the mix, and I think at some schools or rankings are generally irrelevant because people are going to want to go to the flagship in the state, or they're going to want to go to the school that's closest to them, and people are interested in how it ranks, but they're going to go to that school anyway, and it's not having any impact. And I think to international students, I think the rankings are probably more important than they are for U.S.
Right,
students.
because some of them even believe that this is government rankings. It
Right,
says
right.
U.S. on
Right.
it,
Some of
right?
them believe that the U.S. government is involved, and if you're a parent from overseas and your knowledge is limited of U.S. education, and you're paying full sticker price, which they generally are, or not generally. They're going to want to. You can only go to the best school, and the rankings are more
Right,
important
which
to
is
them.
unfortunate. Well, let me ask you this. I know you get a lot of flack about the rankings, right?
Yes.
And I think one reason is because colleges, maybe a lot of parents, when you consider all the kids in the U.S., yeah, most of them aren't paying attention to the rankings, but those that are more affluent families seem to be more plugged into them.
Yes.
And it seems to me the people who really care about the rankings are college presidents and boards of trustees, and they're the ones that are seem fixated on positioning their school so they go higher up in the rankings. And to me, that is what a problem is because of the kind of things schools do to try to increase their rankings. Could you talk about that?
No, I mean you've hit. I mean, you're discussing a complicated process or a complicated aspect of the rankings where some schools, and you hear two things. You can have both the college president or admission dean in one forum be critical of the ranking. Then they can be using the ranking in alumni in the view book as a validation to raise money, or a validation of quality. Um, and it's from the U.S. News perspective, we put the information out there, and we can control how it's used. If schools are using it for benchmarking, or or as a way, or to manage towards the ranking as a way of improving their quality, it's certainly not something we would advise people to do, or it's certainly not the right use of our ranking as a management tool, but it's certainly um, happening out there. There's one sort of it's happening. However, even as just a half an hour ago, I was with some colleges, and an answer to that is an aspect of the answer is that in some of the factors that we have in our ranking are student based. So one argument is that if a school is improving in its graduation rates and doing a better job in freshman retention, or focusing on more small classes, or reducing the number of large classes, or paying their faculty more, which are ranking factors, that students are actually benefiting by a school by having those kinds of improvements. So the argument is, would the school do that anyway? Are they being forced to do this? I mean, that's really an unknown. Is U.S. News really that powerful? I guess we do have some power, but
I think you do have particularly power among board of trustees and presidents, for sure. But now, one thing
I mean, you're right, because they're concerned about the image of the school, and this is one of the main. Well, it's an important part of a school's image, or it's an image that they understand.
They want to slap it on their website. We're
Right.
ranked such and such, right? But
Yes,
now, one
that's
thing I
right.
wish you all would, in changing the methodology, I would love to see you measure the indebtedness, the average indebtedness of students who go to these schools, because I think a lot of schools are pouring money in to increase their rankings, right? To bring more buildings or pay professors better, whatever. And yet there's a consequence to that, because you've got a lot of kids graduating from some of these schools that have debilitating debt. Any thought of adding that to the rankings?
Well, I mean, we do publish a separate list of indebtedness, but I realize your point is that to what degree the students are left having to pay after they graduate should be a factor in the education. Well, I mean, I do agree. It's important at this point in time. We don't have any plans to add it. I think there's some imperfections. This isn't necessarily a great reason not to add it, but it is an aspect of one of the problems of adding it. Schools are really able to keep track of the amount of federal money, the money that they issue that's backed by the government. However, the schools have trouble with the private loans, the alternative loans, the ones they get from banks or those financial institutions. So it's really hard to get an accurate picture of the average student indebtedness. So
well, it's something to think about, because I just think it is important.
It's
costs keep going up. There's a price to pay for, families chasing the rankings, right? And for
I would say
colleges to chase the rankings.
Well, I would say there's another aspect of it which you didn't mention. And it was mentioned in Inside Higher Education, just did a survey that the colleges, and I would say the main reason they're doing it is not necessarily because of the rankings, because they're getting squeezed on their financial aid budgets because they're constrained, and it makes more sense financially, maybe not educationally, but to go after the full pay, pay students who can afford the debt, or at least relatively speaking. So
rich kids are becoming even more popular. Than ever before in the college world. All colleges want full pay kids. So, all right, Bob. Well, listen, thank you so much for sitting here and talking to me about the rankings. I appreciate it.
Well, thank you, Lynn. Okay. I appreciate you asking and getting me a chance to communicate.
A resource, might as well use you and let everybody see who's the man behind the rank. In fact, this guy is so big, he's even got a cup. They put they put his face on this cup, so that's how big he is. Okay. So anyway, thanks everybody for
thank
listening.
You.
Thanks.